Hey folks, welcome back to my channel where we learn to be a better programmer, and this video is part 6 of our Learn the MERN Stack video tutorial where we're building a full stack web application using React, MongoDB, Express.js, and Node.js. So in the last video, what we did was we set up our YouTube video container and we added a text box to allow you to paste in a YouTube video link, and then the container will show that YouTube video. In this video, what we're actually going to do is we're going to set up our client-side authentication. So we're going to allow people to sign up and log in, and that's going to communicate with our backend server. And what we're going to get back in the response is a JSON web token that we're going to use to authenticate the protected route. So that's going to allow users to create notes and update notes and so on. All right, so if you want to follow along, check out the GitHub repo here and then run git checkout tutorial part 5, and you'll be able to code along with me. If you just want to see what the completed code looks like, you can just say git checkout tutorial part 6. All right, without much further ado, let's get into it, folks. So here I am back in Visual Studio Code, and this should look familiar from last time. So in my repo, I just created a new branch called tutorial part 6 with git checkout -b tutorial part 6, like that. All right, so that's what you'll need to do if you want to follow along. So before we get started, I'm just going to do a quick refactor here. So we're going to set up our forms, right? So our auth forms. So we're going to make a request to our server, and then that is going to, we're going to be able to authenticate and also create users. Okay, so I'm going to create a new folder inside of components, and then I'm going to call it auth, like this. Okay, so an auth, and then auth is going to have two files. So I'm going to create a new file called authform.js, and then inside here as well, I'm going to create another file called auth.js. All right, so authform is going to, like it's named, it's just going to be our form to house all of our authentication components. All right, so I'm just going to start off by saying import React from React. And then I'm going to say also import use state as well. And so I'm going to say const auth form is equal to that, and then export default auth form like this. All right. Okay, so now we're going to need a few more imports. We're going to say import grid, card, typography, button, and text field from at material UI core. Nice. All right, and that should be good for right now. Okay, so inside of the auth form, we're going to say const name and set username like that is equal to use state. So this should be familiar from the last video. So in the last video, this use state property, or hook, actually provides a way to set a state value here and then provide a variable for that state value. This is how we set state inside of functional components. So then we're going to say const password, and then set password equal to use state empty. And then we're going to do something called action set action, and we're set equal to use state, and it's just going to be sign in by default, and that's all we need here. All right, so now I'm going to have another function called const authenticate is going to be equal to async, and inside of here it's going to be const base path is equal to API/auth. Now this is the path for our for the user authentication route inside of our server-side API. So this is server-side path. All right, and then we're going to say let URL equal to base path, and then we're going to say if action is equal to sign in then we're going to say URL plus equals login. All right. And then, so just to help us out, we're going to say console.log URL. Okay. And then the response is going to be const response is equal to await fetch URL, and then we're going to throw in some parameters here. So we're going to say method is going to be a post, and then the headers are going to be content type, whoops, is going to be application JSON, all right? And the body is going to be JSON.stringify of username, name, and then password. So actually, I'm going to rename this name variable to be username, like that, just so that way we don't have to do this. So we can just set it like that. And I need a comma here. And cool, that's it. Now we're just going to unpack. We're going to say const JSON is equal to await response.json, and if response.ok, so if we got an OK response back from the server, we're going to create a function, or we're going to call set auth token of json.token, and we'll make this set auth token function in a second. So we're going to say set username is json.user.username, like that. And else, we're going to say alert of json.message. Nice. Okay, cool. So now, so that sets up this nice little authentication function. Now we need to pull in this other hook from React called useEffect. So useEffect is kind of treated like a lifecycle method. So in class-based components, they have these lifecycle methods called component did mount and so on. But functional components don't have that. So they have useEffect, which is how they implement some sort of lifecycle for functional components. So we're going to say useEffect, and inside of here, we're going to put in a function, and it's going to say if props.action, right? If props.action set action props.action, all right? Otherwise, so basically we're saying if props.action, if the action variable or object exists inside of the props object, then we're going to set the action of this form to be that action, all right? Otherwise, if props.location.pathName is equal to sign up, then we say set action sign up, like this. Else set action sign in, like this. Whoops. All right. It's not really good practice to be passing around raw strings all over the place like this, because you could have a typo and then this if statement fails and so on. So typically what you would want to do is pull this out into a constant variable that you're passing around and using to set this action variable. And then in here, after this, you're just going to pass in props. All right, and then one thing that I forgot to do is in here, in this functional component, we're just going to pass in props like that. All right, now, so the next part, what we're going to do is we're just going to create the actual components themselves. So we're going to say const components, or actually, I'm just going to, const components is equal to a list, and then we're just going to say text field. And inside of this text field is going to be a placeholder. It is going to be username, and then name. The name of the field is going to be username, and then value is going to equal username. And on change, so we're going to provide an on change. So when this field changes, we're going to take in an event. Whoops. We're going to take in an event, And then inside, we're going to say set username of e.target.value, like this. All right. And that's all we need to do for that one. And excuse me. And we can copy this in, or copy this here, and this is just going to be password. And we're just going to say password, password, like that. Awesome. And last but not least, we're just going to have a button. So it's going to say button, and then the text inside of that button is just going to be the action that we get from our props or from our state up here. All right. And inside of the button, we're just going to set some props for the button. Okay. So we're going to say variant is going to be contained. Color is going to equal primary, and on click is going to be we're just going to call authenticate, like this. All right. So just to make this look a little nicer, like this, we're just going to put it on different lines like that. All right. So those are our components. And then last but not least, we need to actually provide return the component itself. Okay. So what we're going to say is if the username is set, if it's not empty, right, we're just going to, this is a place where we're going to redirect to the home page. All right, but we're not going to implement that for right now. So so now we're just going to say return, and then inside we're going to say grid container direction is equal to row, and then item. So it's also an item, and then we're going to say XS for extra small screens is going to take up the full width, and then we're going to say justify is equal to center, and then align items is equal to center as well. All right. So then inside of this grid, we're just going to say grid. I'm going to put another grid, and the props of this grid are going to be container, direction is going to be column, and align items is equal to stretch. Oops. And then justify is equal to center, and component is equal to, so we're going to make it look like a card. So Material UI has a nice card component that we can use, and then inside it's going to be an item as well, and then spacing internal to this grid is going to be 3, and XS, so XS for this is going to be 8, and then medium is going to be 4. All right, for this container. And then we're just going to add a style. Also, don't recommend putting inline styles like this. Just put it in a CSS file, but I'm not going to do that for right now. All right, so we just add some padding of 20 pixels. All right, and now we're actually going to add some typography. So this grid item, so the grid item is going to be XS is equal to, actually, sorry, it's going to be a container as well. Item XS is equal to 12, and then justify is equal to center, and then inside we're going to say typography variant is equal to H3, and then the text is just going to be the action. All right, and then we're going to do something a little funky here. So we're going to say components dot map, and then we're going to say component like this, and we're going to say return grid, grid container item direction is equal to column, like that. XS is equal to 12. Line items is equal to stretch, like that. Oops. grid like that. Okay, and then inside, we're just going to put in the component like so. All right, and that's all we need to do there. Actually, let me do that. Okay. And so this form is going to handle both sign up and login. So what we're going to do is we're going to say action sign in. Again, me passing around raw strings like this or putting raw strings all over the place like this is not good. So I would not suggest doing this, but I'm not really following good coding practices right now. So just take that with a grain of salt. All right, so link. So what we're going to also include is that we're going to pull in the React Router DOM project into this project as well. So we're going to have link to, and then it's going to be to sign up. And then the text is going to say don't have an account, sign up. Otherwise, it's going to say link to login and already have an account, sign in, like that. All right, awesome. So let's clean this up a little bit. So basically what we're saying is if the account link is sign in, so if the action is sign in, then we want to provide this link here that will prompt people to sign up if they don't have an account. And then if it's not sign in, so that means if it's sign up and they already have an account, then they can redirect to the sign in page. Okay, cool. So that is pretty much all we needed to do there. So now we need to actually what we need to do is we need to implement our auth.js form here. So what this is going to look like is we're going to say import create context and then use context. And then from React. So this is how we're going to handle our auth state throughout our application. So we're going to say export const auth context is equal to create context like this. And then we're going to say export const use auth equal to this and return use context of auth context like that. Awesome. So now let's jump back over into our auth form and we're going to pull in that hook. So we're going to say import use auth from /auth like this, and then we're going to say const set username set auth token and user name equal to use auth. All right, so this use auth hook is what we're going to use to, like I said, store the state of our application, the authentication state of a particular user within our application. So we're back inside of our app.js function here, and we need to import auth form from, components auth like this, and then auth form actually. It's auth form. And so inside of here, so what we're basically going to do is we're just going to say return auth form like that. Auth form. All right, so very simple. There's going to be a little bit more that we're going to add to this, so we're just going to wrap this in a div for right now, like this, and we're going to say class name is equal to app, or app, like that. Okay, and so now we need to also wrap this in what is called an auth, so in the context provider. So we're going to say auth context dot provider, and we're just going to take this here and paste it down here, and I'm going to hit tab on that. And so what this is going to look like is this is how we handle that authentication state across our application. All right, so we're just going to say, so we're going to say auth token, and then set auth token, and we're going to say user underscore name, and then set user name. So I think these values have to match inside of our auth form. So we have capital, it's camel case here, and then snake case for the actual value, which, you know, I'm not being consistent here, but we're going to have a name collision otherwise. So I'm just going to put it as an underscore. All right, so so I think we have this set up correctly, but now we need to provide implementations of this set auth token and set username. So when we say const set username is equal to, we get some data in, and so if the not data, then we're going to say local storage. So this is handling logging out, for example. Then we're going to say remove item username, and then otherwise, and then we're going to say set username to empty, and then else local storage dot set item username to data, like that, and then set username data as well. All right, so I got a little ahead of myself here. So this actually isn't username, but the app itself is actually going to have a little state, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. All right, so we're going to say const set token. This is actually set token like this, and then set username is going to be to set username like that. I know I can, you know, not have to do this, but I want to be a little bit more explicit here. So we're just going to say, and then we're going to say data inside of this set token function, and then again we're going to just copy this here. You know, we have some code duplication, but again, I just want to illustrate to you, you know, what we're trying, like how this will all work. So we're just going to say token, and then token, and then how we're going to store it is just going to be JSON.stringify of token, like that, and the set auth token. Okay, and this is going to be also set auth token to empty. All right, and then now we just need to add some state inside of here. So what that looks like is we're going to say const existing token is going to be equal to local storage dot get item of token if it's present or empty, and then const existing username is equal to local storage dot get item username, like that, and then otherwise or empty, like that. Okay, so then const auth token is and then set auth token is going to be equal to use state of existing token, and then const username set username is equal to use state of existing username, like that. All right, so what this is doing is we're reading the values in from local storage. If they exist, we set that value. If they don't, then we set it to empty. And then we set up that state with those values initially. And then these functions are what the hook inside of the auth, use auth hook here. Where do I have it? This hook. Those are the functions that are going to get called when we say set token and set username. All right. So back in app.js, so these are what are going to be responsible for setting the cookies inside of local storage. All right. And now, let's see. Let me just make sure. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So this looks good. Actually, this needs to be set username like that. And so these two here are setting the auth token inside of our auth context provider, okay? But what we actually need is to also set the username, in this component to json.user.username like this. All right, so we just we're missing one small step there. So I'm just going to comment this is in the auth context provider like that. All right, so let's start up our server and see how this goes. Need to install React Router DOM. So we're just going to say npm install React Router DOM like that. Awesome. So that's done. And now we need to pull these in. So we're using a link down here, and then we're also going to be using redirect here, but we're not going to pull that in yet. So what that looks like is we're just going to say import link from React Router DOM like that. Awesome. It looks like, yes, I made a mistake. So this needs to say set password. The way I figured that out was this wasn't highlighted or wasn't bright. And it basically told me that I wasn't calling this function, which told me it was incorrect. And it's actually user underscore name here. So basically we want to see if that username exists inside of that auth state, auth context. If it does, we just want to redirect. Otherwise we want to render the form. All right, so let's run this and see what happens. Okay, so I have a little bit of a bug. It says set username has already been declared. So, and that's inside of my app.js. So set username has already been declared. Yeah. So let's instead call this username here. And then we're going to say set username. And it's giving me some more compile errors here. Line 29, saying token is not defined. This is auth token. And username is not defined on line 35. This is actually username, I believe. And source components auth.js, and it says auth context. So this is auth context here. And we've compiled. Nice. And it's yelling at me because this needs to be inside of a router. So what that looks like is we need to actually pull in browser router from React Router DOM. And we're going to take this and put it here. And, oh, whoops. We're going to put it here. And we're going to indent a little bit. And we need to pull in browser router. Browser router. from React router DOM like this. Awesome. Okay. And then last but not least, we need to actually wrap this in with router like this, and we need to pull it in here. When you say with router. So React router DOM gives you access to the history object, but you need to wrap your component in this with router hook here. All right. So here we are. Awesome. So we have this nice little form, and we have a username and a password. Awesome. So this looks good, but let's try to sign up. All right, so if I say, let's say a username is new user, and then the password is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we click sign up, and let's see what it says in the console. All right, so it hit that API endpoint and it didn't load because the server hasn't started up. All right, so I'm gonna fix that, and also I'm gonna make this password value hidden, which is really helpful. So what that's gonna look like is inside of password, I think I can say hidden type. Type is equal to password. I think I can do that. So yeah, okay, awesome. So that fixed that. And then now I also need to start up my server. All right, so we're gonna start up our server, node server.js. Awesome, so we're connected. And now let's go back into our, not the video container, the form. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna log this JSON here. And that's going to be a log from the server. All right, so let's just create a new user, and we're going to make the password something stupid, and we're going to click sign up, and let's see what happens. Inspect console 404 server not found. Okay, so the other issue that we have here is we haven't set up a proxy for our client. So the way you do that is you say, I think it's proxy is going to be local, is localhost port 8080, which is our server host, like that. And it should reload, and if I hit sign up, so post API/auth 404 not found. Okay, so let's take a look at our server again. And so we have server, and then we have API auth, and then inside of our auth routes, do we have a post route? We do. So that's a little strange. All right, so let's take a look at our auth form, and we have post, content type, JSON stringify, the username and password. Interesting. So let's just make sure that when we click on this button and we say authenticate, so the action is actually, so let's also help ourselves out here. Action. Let's see what the action is. So new user and something silly and sign up. All right, so the action is sign up. So the proxy route isn't working because it's saying localhost 3000. So why is that? So maybe I need to actually, so my package.json http:// localhost port 8080. All right, let's try it again. Let me just restart the React app. So let's go back up here and then npm start. And it's starting up. Awesome. So we're gonna say new user, and then the password is something stupid. We hit sign up. Awesome. So we sent a request to the server, and let's see what our, so it's working. Duplicate key, new user. So we already created a new user. It took a while to get a response back, and we see that our message was logged. Nice. Okay, so now what we can do instead is we'll say create or new created user. Let's just try that. And we say sign up. Cool. So we see we got a response back, and we see that the token is here. So we get this token here, and then we have the new created user. Awesome. So we did a lot in this video. So just a quick recap. So we created an authentication hook, which is we created an application-wide context. And then inside of our app.js, we wrapped our entire application inside of this auth context. So that way, any component that's inside of our application, if they use that use auth hook, they'll have access to the token, not only the token, but also the username of that user, which will be useful when we want to save when we want to save a note for a particular user. We added a browser router, which is how we're going to add routes for our application. So in this case, we don't have any routes right now, but we're going to add some public and protected routes so that you'll need to be authenticated to get to those routes. For example, to create a new note, you have to be authenticated. We created our authentication form. So we created some state here. We pulled in that use auth hook. We're logging some information. We have a post request for either logging in or creating a user. And then we also have a way to set those tokens and the username inside of this as well. All right, cool. So if you like the video, please feel free to hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos. And if you have any questions or comments on anything we did in this video, please feel free to drop a comment below. All right, thanks so much.